Hello everyone, Cintier here with the Beast Mastery part of the Ranger skill review from my Guild Wars 1 skill review project. And we're going to go ahead and jump into it. Again, I have 12 Beast Mastery. You can get this up to like 16, so obviously some of these are going to be... But honestly, if you're using Beast Mastery, it's probably going to be around 11 to 13 anyway. I'm right here by a statue of Melandru, but we have 40 skills to get through, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Starting with Bestial Fury. So this is 10 energy, 10-second recharge. It has no activation time because it's a stance. It says all of your non-attack skills are disabled for 5 seconds. For 10 seconds, you attack 25% faster. This is an increased attack speed stance, and as you can tell, to get full uptime, it does require a hefty investment in Beast Mastery. I'm usually not getting quite this high. And you also have to go into Beast Mastery, and if I'm going into Beast Mastery, I have better options for increased attack speed. So, I don't use this. Also, awkwardly, this is the exact same skill as another one, Tiger's Fury. Exact same thing, 10 energy, stance, 10-second recharge. All of your non-attack skills are disabled for 5 seconds, which is a little annoying, but not the biggest deal. Only attacking 25% faster as opposed to 33 is not as nice as I would like. Like I said, I don't use these because they're very, very clunky. I'm never going to go into Beast Mastery for these skills. And if I am in Beast Mastery, that's probably because I'm bringing my pet. Like, there are skills that are not pet-related in Beast Mastery, and I generally never bring them. If I'm going into Beast Mastery, it's for my pet. I don't know why there are non-pet skills in Beast Mastery, to be honest. But, yeah, so I'm going to give these guys... honestly, I'm going to give them, well, 1. Not because I think that they're bad skills, but because they're badly placed. They are kind of hefty in the energy cost. Obviously, expertise is making this cheaper, but if I want to increase my attack speed as a ranger, I have other options for doing that. I have expert's dexterity is if I want to spend my elite slot on that. I have rapid fire as well. I forget where that is. Yeah, right here, that is a preparation that can increase my attack speed. I can even go with like flurry in the warrior from warriors. That's no attribute, or frenzy even. Frenzy is perfectly fine. I'm probably not going to be in battle. At the front of the battle, I probably can bring, like, it's very easy to bring a cancel stance. And Beast Mastery is super, super awkward to go into if you're not bringing a pet. Like, you're spending a bunch of attribute points for an increased attack speed skill. And here's the thing. Like, so there is a no attribute skill. We will talk about it in more detail later. Never Rampage Alone. This has permanent uptime, makes me and my pet attack 25% faster, and gives me HP regeneration. This basically trumps completely Tiger's Fury / Bestial Fury. It's just, if I'm going to be doing something in Beast Mastery, I'm going to be bringing my pet, in which case this is just superior. Like, so completely superior. So, these skills, their effect is perfectly fine. I don't hate the idea of using them, but I'm giving them 1s because I think that they're really badly placed. And I don't know why they exist where they do. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like, so these would probably be like 3s or something if they were in like Wilderness Survival, which is an attribute line that I do typically or will often go into. But where they are, there's just no, like that. Yeah, they have no point. Bestial Mauling. 5 energy, 20-second recharge. It is a pet attack, so none of the pet attacks will have an activation time because they're basically like instant activating skills that apply a buff to your pet. I covered that in the intro. But just as a reminder, none of them will have activation times. So this makes your next pet attack have this effect applied to it. So what Bestial Mauling does is your animal companion attempts a Bestial Mauling that deals plus 17 damage. If the attack strikes a knocked down foe, that foe is dazed for 9 seconds. Okay, I'm going to be blunt. This is another one for me. The reason why is because coordinating stuff with pets is really, really, really awkward. Remember what I said, that this applies a buff to your pet that makes their next attack have this effect? And I believe is Bestial... No, Bestial Pounce is a different skill. But Bestial Mauling, so... Striking a knocked down foe, knocked down tends to be a narrow window. Knockdowns by default last 2 seconds. There are some that can last, like if a warrior does them, they might last 3 because they might have the Stone Fist insignia that makes their knockdowns last longer. And there are some specific knockdowns that will last longer. Backbreaker can last longer. There's a Mesmer Interrupt that can last longer. So there are some knockdowns that can last longer. Than that, but even still, trying to coordinate with your pet to hit a knocked down foe during one of their attacks. Again, this does not make the pet do an attack. This applies a buff to your pet for their next attack. And 20-second recharge is kind of long for pet attacks. Plus 17 is not a whole lot of damage. You only have so many pet attacks you want to bring at a time anyway. And dazing is nice, but there are much better ways of getting dazed. Inflicting the dazed condition, I should say. So this is something that feels very, very awkward to me. And trying to get this to land just feels like way too much work. So, especially for 9 seconds of daze, you can get much longer than that in Ranger if you're specifically going for it. Bestial Pounce. 5 energy, 10-second recharge. That's better. Pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a Bestial Pounce that deals plus 17 damage. If the attack strikes a foe who is casting a spell, that foe is knocked down. So this will interrupt the spell, provided they don't have anything that prevents knockdowns going on, obviously. This is okay. Again, so here's the problem. Almost every single pet attack is trying to compete with Predator's Pounce, which deals plus 29 damage, has a 5-second recharge, and heals your animal companion. This is, to me, sort of the gold standard of pet attacks. So if it's not, like, comparing well against this, because again, you only have so much room on your skill bar for pet attacks. It's going to have a hard time competing. So this one I think is a little bit better than Bestial Mauling, but only marginally. I'm going to give this one a 2. Again, the reason why is it has a hard time competing. It does not deal that much additional damage. 10 seconds is a significantly better recharge. The conditional clause is more of a nice bonus because, again, timing stuff with your pet is difficult for landing specific attacks. It's not impossible that you'll be able to use this, but I feel like if you're going to get the knockdown off this, it's more that you got lucky or they were activating a skill that has at least a 2, maybe plus second cast time. So that feels a little suspect. Brutal Strike, 10 energy. It's a bit more expensive. 5-second cooldown, so that's good. Pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a Brutal Strike that deals plus 29 damage. Okay, that's good. If that attack strikes a foe whose health is below 50%, that foe takes an additional plus 29 damage. This is quite powerful. This is quite powerful indeed. This can hit very, very hard, but I'm still only going to give it a 3. The reason why I'm giving it a 3 and not something higher is because healing my pet off of a cheaper energy cost is more valuable. And again, the number of slots that I'm attributing to my pet is limited. So I would bring something like this Elite right here, or Melandri's Assault, which is an area of effect pet attack. Way before I bring Brutal Strike. That said, Brutal Strike is probably up there in pet attacks, so yeah, a lot of them are not going to favor well, is what I'm saying. Like, if I'm bringing a bar that's heavy on pet attacks, this is definitely one that I would choose, but that's not something I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to want the skill to bring my pet, and then maybe 2 to 3 pet attacks. And one of those is probably going to be an elite. One of them is probably going to be Melandri's Assault. One of them is probably going to be Predator's Pounce. So, because Predator's Pounce, again, heals my pet, which is extremely useful. We will get to why as we go through here. You're going to see that pet healing is a bit awkward. So yeah, this would definitely be a choice. But you know, it gets pushed out by the other ones. So this is like my 4th or 5th choice, and I usually only get to 2 or 3. This is really what it comes down to. Call of Haste is 10 energy, 25-second recharge, shout. For 30 seconds, your animal companion has 33% faster attack speed and moves 33% faster. So if you want to make your pet a lot more deadly, this is a solid choice. I generally am not bringing this. Again, if I'm bringing my pet, I'm probably using the PvE only skill that I mentioned earlier. Never rampage alone, something like that. We will see it again when we get to that section. But that's usually going to push something like this out. That said, this is perfectly serviceable. I'm going to give this a 3. Just because I don't tend to bring this because of bar limitation reasons, but if you're trying to really make your pet deadly, this is a way that you can go about it. There are some other options in this area, though. I appreciate that this sort of skill exists to allow you to be able to say, I really want to focus on my pet and make my pet more awesome. But I'm going to be blunt here. Something like Feral Aggression is a little bit better if you're going sort of that route. The increased movement speed is nice, but there are other ways that you can get that as well. So, Call of Protection. 5 energy, 90-second recharge, which might sound really long, but it's a shout that lasts 120 seconds. So, you know, 90-second recharge is no big deal. This is effectively free, by the way. 5 energy being ameliorated over 100 and basically over 2 minutes. You're going to have regenerated that energy so many times over. The overall cost of this is minuscule. What it does is your animal companion has a base 17 damage reduction. Let me repeat that. For 2 minutes, your animal companion reduces all damage they take by 17. This makes your pet ludicrously tanky. Now, keep in mind, stuff like health degeneration gets around this. But, yeah, like, your pet will basically is a tank. It does not care about most attacks. Also, because your pet will attack in melee, it will run up to enemies and kind of be in range for them. So this does make your pet super, super, super tanky. This is... I'm trying to decide where to put this. Like, this is a very, very, very powerful skill. Aggro management being what it is, obviously you can't 100% rely on this in terms of, like, tanking for your whole party or anything like that. But it is a really, really powerful effect. And this is like the way to get this on your pet. So I'm going to give this a 4. Not because I tend to bring it very often, but because I think its strength and its isn't you're going for a pet and you want your pet to be tanky, do this. Don't bring, on a dire pet, don't bring the other things. That said, this probably isn't a skill that I bring that often, but I'm not using pets that often, to be honest. So 4 is maybe a little generous in that this is a bit narrow, but here we are. Charm Animal. 10 energy, 10-second cast time, no recharge. It's a skill, charm target animal. Once charmed, your animal companion will travel with you whenever you have charm animal equipped. You cannot charm an animal that is more than 4 levels above you. So this is a 2. Obviously, this is an extremely important skill. This is the only skill that does this effect. But you're mostly not charming animals. Like 99.999% of your playtime, you're not charming an animal. Obviously, the skill needs to exist. In PvP, this is the only way to bring your animal companion with you. In PvE, Comfort Animal brings your animal companion with you, and so does the Elite version Heal as 1. Both of these will bring your animal companion with you. So Charmed Animal will literally never be on my bar unless I'm specifically charming an animal, just because I'm not usually playing a pet build in PvP, because I don't usually play PvP. Here we are. But, you know, when you want this effect, this is exactly what you go to. This is super go-to. Now, Comfort Animal is 5 energy, 1 second cast time, 1 second recharge. Skill, you heal your animal companion for 87 health. If your companion is dead, it is resurrected with 48% health. If you have comfort animal equipped, your animal companion will travel with you. So this is going to be a little bit of a misnomer. I'm going to give this a 5. The reason why I'm giving this a 5 is if I'm bringing a pet, I'm pretty much always bringing this skill. This is how I'm bringing my pet with me. That said, this skill kind of does it all in terms of healing your pet, resurrecting your pet, bringing it with you. It is not a very strong skill in that healing for 87 is very, very weak. In general, pet healing is very, very weak. You're going to just see that like skills that specifically heal your pet are hilariously weak in terms of the amount of healing they do. That's part of why Predator's Pounce is so good, because it combines things that you want, damage and healing for your pet. Most of the time, you're relying on your healers in your party to heal your pet. The fact that this resurrects your pet and brings it with you is like the fact that this resurrects your pet is really good. The fact that it brings you with you is vital. That's what gives it such high ranking. If it did not bring your pet with you, you'd still probably need to bring this because this is a way to heal your pet and a way to resurrect your pet, but there are some other options that maybe compete with it. But yeah, this is a skill that's just a cornerstone of a pet build. It doesn't really have much competition. Like I said, there's an elite version, Heal is 1. We'll get into that later. So here we are. It's an okay skill that does a lot, and that makes it good. It makes it vital to the build. And sometimes you need that, right? Sometimes you need the skill that's vital to the build. Companionship. 5 energy, 2 second activation time, 10 second recharge. Skill, if you have less health than your pet, you are healed for 102 health. If your pet has less health than you, it is healed for 102 health. Keep in mind that depending upon your pet's evolution and your runes, it's very possible for you to have a significantly higher max HP than your pet. Right now, that is the case for my character. My character has 565 HP. My pet has 420 base max HP. So, like, even if I'm at, like, 500, 480 health, this is going to heal my pet. This is a very finicky skill. It does not heal for very much. Okay, so a heal skill, like, 100 is actually a pretty solid amount of healing, but, like, I want a heal skill to be cracking 120, 150. This is super finicky. This is super gimmicky. It has an absolutely ludicrous activation time. 2 seconds is so freaking long. For a skill this crap, like 10-second recharge is long. The healing is very minimal. A lot of the self-heals that you see in other professions, like Healing Signet, Ether Feast, there's a couple of like natural healing, are going to be 120 to 150 HP that they heal. This only heals for 102, and it is super finicky. So this is an absolute 1. Okay, so first of all, this is trying to compete with Comfort Animal for your pet healing slot. I'm not even sure. It's so hard to heal yourself with this if you're bringing a dire pet, because your pet's HP is naturally going to be lower. So this is kind of a pet healing skill, but Comfort Animal has that slot on lockdown. This has 1 second recharge. Its healing is mediocre. It's worse than Companionship, but like, yeah. So this is a skill that needs to be reworked to further emphasize the companionship idea and to have a place in any bar whatsoever. So I'm never bringing companionship. It does not bring your pet with you. It does not resurrect your pet. Its healing is finicky. This is not the sort of skill that has any purpose in the game, as far as I'm concerned, because it's just the game is incentivizing you to bring other skills that are fulfilling this role better. So, yeah. Disrupting Lunge. 5 energy, 20-second recharge. It is a pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a disrupting lunge that deals plus 10 damage. If that attack strikes a foe using a skill, that skill is interrupted and is disabled for an additional 20 seconds. I mean, no. So here's my problem. Again, as I've mentioned, having control over the timing for your pet's attacks is a little finicky. The additional damage on this is low, at only plus 10. The recharge at 20 is long. And I'm being blunt. If I want an interrupt that does that, I'm bringing Distracting Shot, which I have control over because it shoots with my bow. We'll talk about Distracting Shot later when we get to expertise, but Distracting Shot, half the recharge time, also does the disable, and I have more control over it. Disrupting Lunge is competing against that, and it is coming out very poorly. I'm giving this guy a 1 because I'm not going to bring it. This is not what I'm trying to do with my pet. I'm trying to do damage with my pet. I'm not trying to maybe be able to possibly interrupt a skill and disable it for a bit longer when I can do that already with my bow, and it's much more reliable. So I'm not doing that. I'm not bothering with that. Edge of Extinction. Oh, poor Edge of Extinction. We'll talk about this thing's history. So 5 energy, 5-second cast or activation time. That's pretty typical, by the way. 5-second activation time is fairly typical for nature rituals, which is what this is. 60-second recharge. Again, nature rituals tend to have a longer recharge. It is a nature ritual, as I've mentioned a couple times. Create a level 8 spirit. So the level here is going to specify how durable it is. The higher level, the more durable. If a non-spirit creature within range dies, Edge of Extinction deals 43 damage to all creatures of the same type that are below 90% health and within range of the spirit. The spirit dies after 126 seconds. So this is specifically something that's supposed to increase sort of mass DPS. What ends up happening is once things start dying, everything starts dying that shares a type with it. This is very dubious to bring in areas that have a lot of human enemies and can be good if you're fighting like Char or something else like that. Something that's non-human. There's this odd line here about 90% health. The reason for that is because this was horrendously and hilariously abused in PvP for griefers that would cast this and then use Necromancer's life sacrifice skill called Blood is Power that sacrifices 33% of your max HP to activate and has like no recharge to suicide, and then they get resurrected and stuff in that area. And so they just kind of like mass kill their side and like mass grief and stuff that way. In alliance battles, it was a dumb thing. It was a whole mess. Unfortunately, that 90% restriction makes this even finickier to use. I'm going to give this a 2. I think you can try to make a build around it, but keep in mind you're going to need creature type. No, wait. This is... Yeah, all creatures of the same type. So you're going to need creature type homogeneity among the enemies that you're fighting. So you need to be... like, only bring this in an area where you know you're going to be fighting a lot of the same type of enemy. Areas that have mixed types of enemies, this becomes worse. And you do have to get them below that 90% health. I can see this being part of a pressure build. In general, nature rituals are really awkward to use in PvE anyway, just because the activation time is long. Your battles tend to be quick. You're going to be moving around a lot. And so the fact that your nature ritual is going to have to, like... They're all about, like, setting up and being in the area for a while, right? That makes things like Edge of Extinction super awkward to use in the first place. If you are going to do that, I would actually recommend going /ritualist so you can use some of the ritualist skills that allow you to move spirits to drag your spirit along, potentially. So, Edge of Extinction, I think you can build around it. Like, all of these do interesting effects in that they affect everything, and how do you build around that to kind of take advantage of that? I think you can with Edge of Extinction, but it's going to be real finicky. Probably pairs well with Disease for reasons of Disease, also caring about same creature type and all that sort of thing. But in general, I'm not going to use most nature rituals, so they're going to have a really hard time getting a good rating from me, just because keeping them up all the time is very, very awkward. Okay, Energizing Wind. This is another nature ritual. It's 15 energy, 5-second activation time, 60-second recharge. Create a level 5 spirit, which is pretty low. For non-spirit creatures within its range, all skills cost 15 less energy, minimum cost of 10 energy, and skills recharge 25% slower. This spirit dies after 25 seconds. So this is kind of a, not just a party-wide, but an area-wide energy management skill. When it says minimum cost 10 energy, it won't raise skills up to that cost, but the dropping skill cost by 15. So, for example, a 15 energy skill won't suddenly be 0 energy. It's still going to be 10 energy. But basically, this makes 15 and 25 energy skills cost 10 energy, which is still a good chunk of energy. This is a 1 for me. Making skills recharge 25% slower is a huge downside. I like the idea of what this is trying to do, of saying, okay, we're going to slow the pace of play, but you can bring a lot of expensive spells that benefit from being way cheaper. But there are better ways to do energy management. Again, nature rituals are super finicky to drag around anyway. If you're bringing this, I'm expecting you to be loading up with like elementalists with 25 energy skills and stuff like that to get maximum use out of this. And that's just not a great strategy. The thing is, a lot of the skills that you want to make cheaper are 10 energy, not 15 and 25. There are no 20 energy skills in the game for some reason. So this is not really like, there are a bunch of skills that this will affect, of course, but it's not that many. And again, making everything recharge slower is very dubious. I would bring this skill for the slower recharge effect more than the decreased energy cost. And I don't even want that effect. Like, the only reason why I'd want that effect is to slow down enemy recharge times and to be like intentionally bringing skills that recharge very quickly to minimize the impact of that. And even that's extraordinarily dubious. So I don't need to make my meteor showers, recharge in 75 seconds, but only cost 10 energy. It's just not worth it. There are better ways to manage energy. That's what it comes down to. There are better ways to manage energy. If this had minimum cost 5, it would start to look more attractive. I should add. It would start to look a lot more attractive if its minimum was 5 instead of 10. That 10 is just killer for it. Enraged Lunge. So this is an elite pet attack. 5 energy, 5-second recharge. Your animal companion attempts an enraged lunge that applies a deep wound to the target foe for 17 seconds and deals plus 42 damage. This is one of the pet-based elites that I do bring, and I have a tendency to bring. I'm gonna give this one a 4. The main reason why, I often do bring it, but I'm not guaranteed to bring it. And it's also competing with Ferocious Strike that we'll get to later in just a few. But Enraged Lunge is pretty close to a 5. It's like a 4.5. It's kind of the eviscerate of pet attacks. It makes your pet hit ludicrously hard. It has a very short recharge. And it's overall an extraordinarily strong pet attack. There are some options I might bring over it, but if I'm looking for a pet attack, an elite pet attack, this is going to be really high up there. Feral Aggression. 15 energy, 20-second recharge, skill for 17 seconds. I don't know why this isn't a shout, why it's a skill. But here we are. That might be randomly relevant, by the way. Excuse me, if you're in an area with enemies that have anti-shout skills that they're using. The fact that this is a skill. But anyway, for 17 seconds, your pet attacks 33% faster and deals 9 additional damage. So this is not a skill I typically bring. I'm going to give this a 3. I think this is a fine way of getting a lot of additional damage in with your pet. Making your pet attack faster and deal additional damage based on their attack is very strong. So it will enable them to hit a good bit harder. But that said, bar space is limited, and I'm probably bringing Never Rampage Alone, I believe it is, the Sun Spear skill that makes me and my pet both attack faster. So this is going to have a hard time fitting onto a bar because it's competing with that skill that does more. But, if you really want to emphasize your pet hitting hard, this is a really strong option. And I think it's arguably a little bit better than Call of Haste for that, although obviously the move speed buff, you're counterbalancing move speed buff and the additional damage. So it's just a bit of your own decision-making on what you think is better there for that. Feral Lunge. 5 energy, 10-second recharge, pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a feral lunge that deals plus 29 damage. If the attack strikes a foe who is attacking, that foe suffers from bleeding for 21 seconds. Okay, so bleeding is not a great reward, but hitting an attacking foe is probably not the most challenging thing. This deals at least a modicum of damage, but this is just not... Like, I don't hate running this, but it's going to have a really hard time competing in pet attack land. So I'm going to... Let's see, what seems fair for something like that? Honestly, I'm going to give this like a 2. I don't hate it, but here's the thing. Like, it's kind of low down in the pecking order, and something like Brutal Strike is above it, and Brutal Strike doesn't even get in. This deserves to be rated lower. So I'm going to give it that. The fact that it deals 29 damage is good, and this kind of outweighs some of the other ones, but the recharges at 10 seconds, like, a lot of the pet attacks I'm going to be looking at are going to be like 5-second recharges. The ones that I'm going to bring. So 10 seconds is actually kind of long. The damage is good, but the bonus is meh. So here we are. Ferocious Strike. 5 energy, 8-second recharge, elite pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a Ferocious Strike that deals plus 25 damage. If that attack hits, you gain adrenaline and 9 energy. So this one is... So you don't bring this for the damage. If you want damage, you bring Enraged Lunge for the elite. But this here is for the adrenaline and energy gain that this provides. I particularly like this on Warrior, which is going to be a lot more energy strapped than, say, Ranger or like any other... Basically any other profession. Like, Ferocious Strike is more favorable to a Warrior. Warriors have plentiful ways of inflicting deep wound anyway, a skill that gains them energy to help with their pet. Energy management and adrenaline are both really valuable. So I'm going to give this one a 4 as well. This is one of the other pet attacks. It's more of that 4. Enraged Lunge is more of a 4.5. I'm going to bring in Enraged Lunge more often than Ferocious Strike, but Ferocious Strike is super consideration. Keep in mind, neither of these are skills that I bring without a pet, obviously. So there is some context there. Technically, they're all like 2s if I'm in a build that brings a pet, but it's a little bit more general than that, and I want to get a little bit better of an understanding. So I am happy to bring Ferocious Strike. I do want to be able to take advantage of the adrenaline gain that this provides as well. The energy gain is also pretty solid. So I'm happy to bring this on like a Warrior or a Paragon or something, or a Dervish, than I am on like a Ranger or Assassin or whatever. Just because there are other options. But if you need some energy management, this is also a way to get it when working with your pet. So something to keep in mind. I do appreciate, by the way, that Enraged Lunge and Ferocious Strike are both pet elite attacks that are doing different enough things that there are legitimate reasons why I'd want either one of them, depending upon what I'm trying to do with my build. And I think that's a good aspect of the design. Fertile Season. This is another nature ritual. It's 15 energy, 5-second activation time, like normal, 60-second recharge. Nature ritual that creates a level 8 spirit. Non-spirit creatures. Basically, all of these... At one point in time, a lot of stuff would affect spirits too, but with ritualist spirits, that was deemed to be too powerful, because ritualist spirits are very powerful. So tons of things are like non-spirit. So just be aware of that, I guess. That's what that clause is there about. It's about the spirits that ritualists can summon. Anyway, non-spirit creatures within range have plus 130 maximum health and gain plus 38 armor. The spirit dies after 39 seconds. Wow! I didn't realize this only lasted 39 seconds. This doesn't even have 100% uptime. This is garbage. Why is this so bad? There must be some random PvP explanation for why this is utter trash. Like, okay, so making everything bulkier is not useful. It makes all of your enemies tougher too. So I can see using this... I don't know. I honestly don't know when I would... Like, this is a 1 from me. You're putting a lot... It's 15 energy. You're waiting 5 seconds for this to get up. It doesn't even last long enough to have 100% uptime. For some reason. Like, I've never really cared about this skill, to be honest. So, like, here's the thing. This would be a lot more interesting if this was, like, plus a bunch of HP minus a bunch of armor. Because then what you'd be doing is you'd be emphasizing non-armor ignoring damage. So, like, if this was non-spirit creatures within range have, like, 2 times HP and half armor, right? Something like that. Or, you know, plus 240 HP minus 40 armor. Or like plus 480 HP minus 40 armor or whatever. That would be kind of the equivalent there. But something to emphasize HP over armor, that would be really interesting. It would make healing relatively worse. It would make elemental damage and that sort of thing way better. That would create a compelling variance to how things play. As it is, this is just making things bulkier, and it's not playing in an interesting design space. I wouldn't bother with this ever. There's another one down here that we'll get to later, Symbiosis, which does a similar thing that I would consider every time over Fertile Season. Why is this so short in duration? I have 12 freaking Beast Mastery. This should last 120 seconds or so. I don't know. There's a story there that I legitimately... I probably knew it at one point in time, but it was so irrelevant to me that it didn't stick. So I don't know. Okay. Here we are. Heal as 1. 5 energy, 1 second activation time, 5 second recharge, elite skill. For 15 seconds, your animal companion steals 16 health whenever it hits with an attack. So when you activate this, it applies a buff to your pet that makes it steal 16 health whenever it hits with an attack. I assume that's health for it. You and your companion are both healed for 87 health. If your companion is dead, it's resurrected with 50% health. If you have this skill equipped, your companion will travel with you. So this is an alternative for bringing your pet with you that it's an option instead of comfort animal. It does make your pet hit harder by having it steal 16 health. It heals both you and your pet and is a resurrect for your pet. The healing is no better than... In fact, the healing is arguably a little... So, it heals for the same amount with a lower recharge, but adds lifesteal, which kind of compensates. I think the lifesteal is a more recent addition to the skill, honestly. I don't typically bring this one, though. I'd rather bring, like, Enraged Lunge or Ferocious Strike. I'm going to give this one a 3. I think it's a solid option, and it might be worth a little bit more. Anyway, I think this is a solid option if you're doing stuff with the pet and you want your pet to be able to hit a bit harder. You want it to be able, like, you want to kind of do that, but I'm generally going to want Enraged Lunge type angle, Enraged Lunge or Ferocious Strike over this, and just bring Comfort Animal. So I can see bringing this sometimes, but it's very unlikely, and the thing is it just gets washed out. So Hecate's Rampage. 5 energy, 10 second recharge, stance. For 10 seconds, you attack 33% faster. This stance ends if you use an attack skill. So why am I going to bring this? Like, seriously. I want to be able to use attack skills. Not being able to use attack skills is a pretty huge downside. Now, this does get 100% uptime, and I note that. But there's some warrior stuff that's similar, but has other upsides. I think like Berserker Stance maybe didn't allow you to use attack skills, or didn't. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Here's the thing. At least the energy cost is low, but I'm never bringing this either. Again, it's in Beast Mastery. I can't easily access this. If I'm going into Beast Mastery, it's to bring a pet, and then I have a better option. So Hecate's Rampage, again, gets a 1 from me. I know Ranger's getting a lot of 1s. Beast Mastery is very hit or miss. The thing is, Hecate's Rampage, yes, it allows me to attack faster, but it has the downside of ending when I use an attack skill. That's a significant downside, and it requires me to go into Beast Mastery. And if I'm going into Beast Mastery, I have other options that I would significantly rather bring over this one. So it doesn't really have a good place, and that's why it gets such a low rating. Like, I don't want this, so. And like I said, Warrior provides me options that allow me to be able to attack faster, that allow me to use attack skills as well. So this just doesn't have a good spot. Lacerate. This is an elite nature ritual. Because it's elite, it gets to have a 3-second activation time. Whee! It's 10 energy, 3-second activation time, 15-second recharge. 15-second recharge is very low. For a nature ritual. It is an elite nature ritual that creates a level 8 spirit. Bleeding creatures within its range suffer -2 health degeneration. When this spirit dies, all non-spirit creatures within its range that have less than 90% health begin bleeding for 21 seconds. The spirit dies after 126 seconds. Interesting. Death clause. 15-second recharge makes that a little bit better, I guess. I could see trying to pair this with some random ritualist stuff that allows you to blow up allied spirits to try to get bleed. So this makes bleeding actually kind of painful with the additional -2 health regeneration. But I'm going to be honest. This is so awkward to try to use. That 90% health clause is more restrictive than you'd think. You do have to be spreading damage around to make that applicable, and that's only when the spirit dies. I don't know why it has the non-spirit creatures clause, because spirits can't bleed. They don't have flesh, obviously, because they're spirits. So, bleeding... This makes bleed slightly better. It's slightly better activation time, but this is just not worth it. I'm going to give this a 2 just because you can try to make a build with it, but it's a very low 2. It's a 1.6 type of 2. It's a good idea, right, to be able to amp up the effectiveness of bleeding, but bluntly, while this makes bleeding more deadly, it's not... It takes up your elite slot. There's toxicity. Toxicity is better because it's not an elite. We'll get to toxicity later. Lacerate is just... Nature rituals are going to have a hard time getting good scores anyway because they're very awkward to use. The main thing this is going for it is it has a quick activation time because it's an elite, and it has a very low recharge time, which is very nice, but this is just not worth bothering with. And there's enough enemies that don't bleed. I know I bring this up quite often, but seriously, like, elementals, djinns, undead, typically, not all undead, some undead are fleshy, but typically undead, like, they're all non-fleshy. They all don't bleed. Bleed is not the easiest condition to apply, weirdly enough, in various areas. So you need to be aware of whether or not the enemies you're fighting are fleshy. And yes, basically this is making bleed deal an additional 4 damage per second. It bumps it up from 6 to 10. That's certainly nice, but it's better to apply more conditions than to just make your bleed a bit stronger, and this is taking up your elite slot. This is not worth an elite slot. If this weren't an elite, it would probably be more of a solid 2, but as an elite, it's like even shaky as a 2. Yeah. Maiming Strike. Pet attack. 10 energy, 5-second recharge. Your animal companion attempts a Maiming Strike that deals plus 17 damage. If that attack hits a moving foe, that foe becomes crippled for 13 seconds. There are better ways to inflict crippled with Ranger. I'm going to give this a... Yeah, I'm going to give this like a 1, I think. Like, attacks have a really high bar to cross, and this doesn't quite cross it for me. The damage is low, the energy cost is high, the recharge is good. The crippled is... Like, there are other ways of snaring things. This is just so awkward to try to do. So, no. No. Melandru's Assault. Melandru, of course, being the nature goddess that rangers are associated with. It is 10 energy, 5-second recharge, pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a Melandra's Assault that deals plus 17 damage to all nearby foes. Nearby is a huge area of effect. This is a solid, like, 4.5. Like, this is definitely one that I strongly consider bringing with me when I'm bringing a pet. Because it is a huge area of effect that hits nearby foes. Like, it's an area of effect. Good recharge. Its damage is a bit low, but area of effect makes up for that. I will bring something like Predator's Pounce before this. Predator's Pounce, again, is just extremely valuable. We'll get into that more when we get down there. You can see it down there. But I think Melandra's Assault is quite good and is certainly a high choice because of the area of effect. So, area of effect is really strong in PvE. It's something to keep in mind. It's part of why spears are bad. We'll get that when we get to Paragons. So yeah, Melandra's Assaults. Yeah, I'm happy to bring it. It is a pet attack that I will often bring on Ranger. It's really important to note that this 10 energy cost is significant for anyone that is not a Ranger. You have to be able to have some other form of energy management because this is very, very expensive. Rangers, of course, this gets dropped down to more of a 5 energy cost, which makes it a lot more reasonable and a lot easier to make use of. Okay. Otyugh's Cry. So, this skill used to have the effect of making all wild animals in the area hostile to everything and buffing them a little bit, maybe. It was absolute trash. It was the butt of all jokes at the time. Now, its functionality has changed since then, as you can see. But it used to be... So, the thing is, all wild animals were level 5. I think the skill, when it originally designed, it was concepted that wild animals could have levels higher than 5. But there's basically no time you'd ever use it. And it would make them hostile to everything, including yourself. Because normally they aren't hostile. Normally they're allied to everything, unless they take damage, in which case they turn hostile towards whatever dealt damage to them. So... the Otyugh's Cry in that form had no use whatsoever. It is complete and utter garbage. This one is perfectly serviceable. It is 5 energy, 30-second recharge shout. For 22 seconds, your animal companion gains plus 24 armor and cannot be blocked. So, the additional armor is nice. If I want to protect my pet, I'm not going to bring this. I'm going to bring, Call of Protection, which gives friggin' base damage reduction, which is way better than armor. Reducing damage that you take by 17 for 2 minutes is way better than not even 100% uptime of plus 24 armor. That's not why you're bringing Otyugh's Cry. You're bringing Otyugh's Cry because of the cannot be blocked clause. Making your pet unblockable for 22 seconds could be really good in areas that have a lot of blocking. That said, I'm going to give this a 2. I'm giving it that because if I'm not in an area where there's a lot of blocking, I don't want this skill. I want Call of Protection if I'm trying to make my pet bulkier. So your mileage may vary. I think that somewhere like Korna, which has a lot of rangers that use whirling defense, this could be really nice for the unblockability, that sort of thing. But just keep in mind that that is why you're bringing this skill, not for the armor. Because if you're bringing it for the armor, you have better choices, is what I'm getting at. Poisonous Bite. 5 energy, 7-second recharge, pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a poisonous bite that poisons target foe for 17 seconds. This doesn't even have plus damage. Like, 17-second poison is decently long, but Ranger has plenty of other ways of inflicting poison. So the fact that this doesn't even deal plus damage, like, this is not a good skill. This is a 1 for me. If I'm bringing a pet attack, I want that pet attack to actually deal damage. Yes, a 17-second poison is 8 times 17 damage, which is going to be, what is that? Like 126 damage or something like that for the full duration. But I have other ways of inflicting poison as a ranger that are superior. This is very clunky in terms of, like, all it does is inflict poison from my pet attack. That's not good enough. That's just not good enough. I need additional damage. The bar is way too high for pet attacks because there's only so many that can get on my bar at once, right? Pounce. 5 energy, 20-second recharge. Pet attack. Your animal companion's next attack is a pounce that deals plus 17 damage. If the attack strikes a moving foe, that foe is knocked down. We've talked about this before with Coward. So, knocking down, like, the moving foe condition is more difficult than you would think. The recharge on this is very long. Maiming Strike is superior, in my opinion, because crippled on a moving foe is going to be better than knocking them down. It's flavorful, Pounce is, but it's just not... What was this one? Okay, I think that was a duplicate of a skill something. We'll see. But this is just not there for me. This is a 1. Excuse me, I bumped my table. It's a 1. It has a very long recharge. It deals only okay plus damage for pet attacks. The foe has to be moving to be knocked down. It's super difficult to make good use of. Predator's Pounce. 5 energy, 5-second recharge. I've talked about this one a lot. Pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a Predator's Pounce that deals plus 29 damage. If that attack hits, your animal companion gains 41 health. This is a 5. With the giant asterisk that this is a 5 when I'm bringing a pet. If I'm not bringing a pet, obviously it's a 0 because I'm never bringing it without a pet. It doesn't do anything. This is so high because A, the damage is good, the recharge is low, the energy cost is low, and it also gains your pet health. Gaining your pet health is super valuable. Like I've mentioned, the skills that heal your pet are very weak. 87 health, for example, on Comfort Animal. You have to spam this a lot. You have to basically be spending a lot of your time spamming this to really heal your pet well. And Predator's Pounce takes the edge off of that. It helps your pet stay healthy while dealing a lot of additional damage. This is very solid. This is like the pinnacle of pet attacks. I will bring this before the elites like 99% of the time. Like, if I can only bring one pet attack, it's probably Predator's Pounce, not one of the elites. That's how good this is, just from the standpoint of keeping your pet alive and all of that sort of stuff. So, it's very, very highly ranked in my mind. And I do like the fact that this gives you additional ways to keep your pet alive that don't require, like, that's not like a Comfort Animal style thing. It's good to have that sort of effect, I think. I would say from a design standpoint that this probably should be like a 7-second recharge or deal less damage or something. It's probably a little bit too potent of a package. And it pushes a lot of other skills out, but a lot of the other pet skills could stand to be a little bit better. So here we are. Predatory Bond. 10 energy, 30-second recharge. Shout. For 17 seconds, your animal companion attacks 25% faster and heals you for 25 health with each successful attack. Successful attack, I think, means that the attack wasn't interrupted. I'm not sure how this interacts with blind or other mischances. It might not work off of mischances either. So this is questionable. I'm not sure how many attacks that works out to. If that's about an attack a second, this can gain you some decent health. But again, not 100% uptime. There's another skill that does what I want. Like, there are other options for this sort of thing. I would rather bring Call of Haste to increase my pet's attack speed. Or, what was the other one? Feral Aggression to increase their attack speed and their damage with better uptime. The fact that this heals you is nice, but that makes this a very clunky self-heal at best. So I would rather rely on my monks to keep me alive than my pet's attacks working well. Pet AI is a little wonky. I'm going to give this a 1. I'm being very brutal here, but let's face it, there's a lot of different ways to buff your pets, and they have a very high bar to meet because there's only so much room you have in your bar for buffing your pet. So no thank you for this one. I like the design space where this is playing around in, to be clear. I think that's a really solid design space. I just think it's a very clunky one. I'd rather see this be at like 15 energy, 15-second recharge. Then I would consider Predatory Bond more. I want to be able to keep it up the entire time. And the biggest knock against this, honestly, is it does not have 100% uptime. And Never Rampage Alone exists. Never Rampage Alone pushes a lot of these pet buff skills out because this buffs me and my pet, right? And buffing both of us is way better than buffing one of us. That's just, unfortunately, this cold, hard truth of the matter. So Predatory Bond is trying to compete with that skill and losing. That's what's going on with a lot of these. That's part of what's pushing some of these ranks down. I don't think this is a bad skill per se, and maybe a 1 is a bit harsh. It probably is. I'm going to go ahead and bump this up to a 2. As I kind of talk about it, I think a 1 is a little overly harsh for this guy. It's just a victim of there's other options there that are significantly better, so this can never quite get on the bar. I would pick Call of Haste or Feral Aggression over this, so it's just not quite there. Yeah. Predatory Season, another nature ritual, 5 energy, 5-second activation time, 60-second recharge. It's a nature ritual that creates a level 8 spirit. For non-spirit creatures within its range, all healing is reduced by 20%. Okay. If any of your attacks hit, you gain 5 health. This spirit dies after 126 seconds. So this is a very weird one. This is trying to emphasize attacking for healing over... and I believe... I feel like there's some weird finickiness between like gaining health and being healed and stuff like that, where like that 5 is definitely not reduced by the healing reduction of 20%, so it will heal you for 5, not 4. I like the space that this is playing around in and what this is trying to do, but I don't think it's extreme enough. What you want this to emphasize is like need to attack other people. I think it should have been reduced the healing by like 33 or 40% and have the health gain on attack be more like 7 to 10. As it is, it's a little mild. I'm not going to bring this, obviously. I like the design space. I think it's really hard to build around. I'm going to give it a 2 simply because I like the space that this is in design-wise. But like, bluntly, this is not an effect that I'm really looking for. You have to build around it, of course, because this is a global effect, right? So the idea is that you are able to operate in this mode better than your enemies are. And that's kind of a weird call to make with something like this. And I just don't think it quite works out that way a lot of the time. So here we are. Primal Echoes. Another nature ritual. It's 5 energy, 5-second activation time, 60-second recharge. Nature ritual that creates a level 8 spirit. For non-spirit creatures within its range, signets cost 10 energy to use. The spirit dies after 126 seconds. Okay, I'm really glad that this skill exists because this is counterplay to signets. Signets normally do not have any energy costs, so bringing a signet is a way of kind of freeing up energy requirements from your bar. It allows you to still be able to do something without having to use energy to do it. Primal Echoes staples a gigantic energy cost. 10 energy is a huge cost. It staples that onto all signets. So this is a really good counter signet skill. That's important. There needs to be skills that let you counter strategies if they become really good. Unfortunately, that's more of a PvP consideration, not a PvE one. If the designers wanted to make this a PvE consideration, they'd have to make areas where enemies use signet-based builds, where this would allow you to be able to shut them down by making all of their signets really expensive. This is a very strong counter. It does so in a way that's different than, say, Rust or Ignorance do, the Elementalist and Mesmer hexes, respectively, which just shut down signets, like, say, you can't activate them for a while. This says you get, like, 2-3 uses, then you have to wait for your energy to recharge. This is massively crippling to signet usage. So design space-wise, this is really good. This is doing something that you want, which is being a very strong counter strategy to signets. The game is not designed around that. So in terms of there aren't any PvE areas that I can think of where the enemies are using signets so much that I want a specific anti-signet strategy. But it's important to exist if that did come up, And if for some reason a PvP meta had suddenly been like, oh yeah, we all want to make Mesmer Signet, like Signet Mesmers, then this would be a strong counter to that, because it would make their bars kind of not work. It is a little fragile, so you would have to try to keep it alive, but it's an effective counter strategy, and it's really important that that sort of thing exists. So from a design standpoint, this is fantastic. I'm only going to give it a 2, and the only reason why I'm giving it a 2 is because it's a really important design for the game. Unfortunately, there is no area that I can think of in PvE where I have a reason to bring this. So, very powerful counter skill that's countering a thing that's not a threat. So, it doesn't have a space. That's just kind of how it goes. But, if I did need to counter mass signet usage, this would be one of the most effective ways to go about it. Rampage as 1. 25 energy, 10-second recharge, elite skill. For 13 seconds, both you and your animal companion attack 33% faster and run 25% faster. This was actually the inspiration for Never Rampage Alone, as I believe this came first. I'm not 100% positive on that. This was extremely powerful in PvP and got nerfed several times. As it is so energy expensive. So expertise will drop this. You need high expertise to really use this. You can get up to a 60% energy reduction with 15 expertise. And that drops this down to about 10 energy, which is still very expensive. It's very, very hard to afford this skill. It's very, very powerful, but it's very, very, very hard to afford. So, here's the thing. Never Rampage Alone is the non-elite PvE skill answer to this skill. You're probably never going to bring this in PvE because Never Rampage Alone exists. This is so expensive to try to keep up that it's just not worth trying to keep up. It's better to go with the non-elite skill and open up your elite slot and maybe bring Run as 1, which you can see down below, which lets you run faster. You and your pet run faster. I'm going to give this a 2 just because it is a very powerful effect. It's just a powerful effect that doesn't quite slot in, if that makes sense. Just because they're non-elite options that are way easier to actually make use of in PvE. In PvP, obviously, this is a very, very powerful skill, which is why it got hit so hard. Yeah. It should have been made into a stance or something, probably. So there's more counterplay. But that's another discussion. I mean, that is a discussion that I can bring up right now. There are different ways that you can nerf things. And doing something like, Rampage's 1 is too powerful in PvP. How about instead of making it... I guess it has to be a skill just for affecting both... No, it doesn't, because Run as 1 is a stance. They could have just turned this into a stance, and then it would have, you could end it with stance-ending skills. And that would have given an option for counterplay. That's a direction that I would have tried. Balancing stuff is really difficult. There's a lot of knobs to turn, and understanding which knobs to turn to decrease something into an acceptable range can be really, really hard, and I don't feel like ArenaNet always did that very well, unfortunately. I'll talk about it especially when we get to Monk, but I think ArenaNet, some of the people during those, the bulk of the game's more active days, particularly in the 2006 to 2008 range-ish, I'd have to look at some of the exact time periods, were perhaps not as skilled at balancing the sort of game that Guild Wars 1 is as I thought they were at the time. And certainly in retrospect, I'm a little underwhelmed by it. There are knobs that you can turn with something like this. And I think doing something like making it a stance, giving it a quarter-second activation time, things like that, to just try to tweak with it rather than making it extremely high energy uptime, would have been more interesting ways of attempting to find ways to try to make it a little bit more reasonable. I think it's cool to have really powerful skills in the game. Unfortunately, some of the stuff that was really cool was addressed in ways that I felt were, looking back on them, quite blunt. And I don't know if they tested subtler approaches and they weren't working, but I definitely feel that this skill is one of those that was kind of a little bit of a victim of not quite knowing how to, or not quite softening it, but it's still usable. It's just very, very difficult because you're basically spending all of your energy on it. Like that 13-second duration on the Ranger, you're going to regenerate 1 energy per second, so you're going to regenerate 13 energy. So you can keep this up, but you have no energy for anything else. So you basically are forced to use all adrenaline skills, or you absolutely need a zealous weapon, things like that, to be able to keep your energy up. So you can do it. It's just very, very tight, and your energy is going to be very, very tight. So this was particularly used with like Ranger warriors using warrior attack skills. That said, I think this could work particularly well with like a scythe, using like Radiant Scythe, which is a scythe attack that gives you a bunch of energy, things like that. But you have to be building to kind of manage your energy with this. And it's just not worth it when you can free up your elite slot and bring the PvE only skill and run as one. So it's interesting to kind of think about some of these design considerations. But yeah, that's kind of where Rampage's 1 is at. Revive Animal. 5 energy, 6-second activation time, 20-second recharge, skill, resurrect all nearby allied animal companions that come back to life with 77% health. Okay. Everyone who has an animal companion should have Comfort Animal and can resurrect their own friggin' pet. And that has a 1-second activation time. The 6-second activation time on this is very long, and the thing is, it's nearby, so they all have had to die kind of within the same general space because the AoE is limited on this. I'm never bringing this. Like, Comfort Animal has to be on, like, basically, the only way I'm bringing a pet is with Comfort Animal or Heal as 1. Both of them resurrect that pet. This has no space. There's no room for this. The only reason to potentially bring this is if you have a bunch of people who are bringing their pet with Charmed Animal for some ludicrous reason. Again, in the PvE context, you're bringing your pet with a skill that can resurrect your pet. So this has literally no place. Design-wise, like, so this is maybe a skill that I could consider bringing with like a 3-second activation time and no area of effect restriction. Just resurrect all allied animal companions. They come back with 77% health. That I might consider if I'm bringing a lot of pets for some reason. But not in its current incarnation. It's way too narrow and difficult to use, especially when they all are bringing skills to resurrect their pet anyway. This just doesn't have a space to find use. This is a victim of the fact that originally Comfort Animal and Heal as 1 did not bring your animal companion with you. That was added to make bringing pets easier in PvE. It does not work that way in PvP. People like their pets, and ArenaNet wanted to make it easier to bring them along. Revive Animal never really changed to compensate for that. So that fact alone, that's why it existed in the first place. Because originally people might only bring Charmed Animal and be like, okay, you are bringing the Revive Animal to revive our pets. And that would save space across your party. But with the way the design is now, this no longer has any room. So that's just some history for why this is as it is. Run as 1. 5 energy, 15-second recharge, stance. For 13 seconds, you and your pet run 25% faster. So this works as a nice companion to never rampage alone. I'm technically going to talk about Never Rampage Alone in the PvE only episode, but it's kind of getting backdoored into this one just because of how it's a pet related skill. Run as 1 is perfectly fine. I'm happy to bring this. It's probably about a 3.5, but I'm not doing 0.5, so I'm going to give this a 4. I don't always bring it when I'm doing stuff with a pet. If I'm bringing it, it's usually because I'm doing a like a bunny thumper is the name, which is like a ranger with a hammer, often with a pet with them. Some sort of build along that line. I don't know why it's called a bunny thumper, by the way. That's just what it's called. But run as one is a very solid option there, as it allows me and my pet to run faster. I only really care about running faster on a ranger if I'm using a melee weapon. Otherwise, I have a bow. I can attack from range. I don't need to run up to my enemy to be able to hit them. I don't need to be able to chase them around. I can just shoot them. So run as one is a skill that I definitely will bring with me. It is a high consideration, but it's like on a ranger, it's not always going to come along because I'm going to often be able to not need to increase my own movement speed. That was an awkwardly worded sentence, but anyway, that's run as one. I appreciate the design space that this is sitting in. This is a sort of skill that is not a that specifically wants to be in Beast Mastery. Like, this skill makes you run faster. Ranger has lots of different options for running faster, but run is one, specifically one that works with your pet, and that gives it a niche. That gives it a reason to exist in Beast Mastery. And I'm specifically saying this in contrast to things like Tiger's Fury. Why is Tiger's Fury in Beast Mastery? Because it's talking about a tiger, I guess. This skill is not a skill that will bring me into Beast Mastery, and when I'm here, I don't want it because I have other options, because the thing that pulls me into Beast Mastery is my pet. And in that point, I have the PvE only skill. Run as one, however, is a skill. It's competing on a different area. It's not just an increased attack speed. It's increased movement speed, which the PvE only skill doesn't do. But it's also something that's specifically working with my pet, right? And the fact that it's working with my pet, that it improves me and my pet kind of simultaneously, means that it has a reason to exist in Beast Mastery, and it has a reason to be picked over skills in other attribute lines when I'm in Beast Mastery. So those are some really useful considerations. That's part of what makes run as one significantly better than some of those other options. So I really appreciate that. Savage Pounce. 5 energy, 10-second recharge, pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a Savage Pounce that deals plus 17 damage. If the attack strikes a foe who's casting a spell, that foe is knocked down. Is that the same as... I want to say... yeah, okay. Bestial Pounce is the same skill as that. I couldn't remember. I was pretty sure there was a pet attack that was duplicated with the whole factions mess, business, whatever. And it was that one of all things. Everything I said about that one applies to this one. What did I give Savage Pounce? Where is it? No, wait, this is Savage Pounce. Was that Bestial Pounce? I need to check. Yeah, Bestial Pounce. So yeah, I gave Bestial Pounce a 2. I'm sticking by that. Savage Pounce can have a 2. Decent energy cost. Recharge is okay, but not good. The knockdown on casting a spell is certainly reasonable, but this is not a high choice, as has been established. I don't need to go over that again, though. Scavenger Strike. 5 energy, 10-second recharge, pet attack. Your animal companion attempts a Scavenger Strike that deals plus 22 damage. If the attack strikes a foe who is suffering from a condition, you gain 13 energy. So this is an interesting one. I definitely think that this is an okay pet attack skill. It deals decent damage. You do need to have conditions flowing in your party to bring this. You are a ranger, so chances are good that you are doing that, and conditions in general are good, so you probably have them going around your party. That said, I'm often not bringing this, but this is an option if you want energy management. I would consider this more on like a warrior or something. I'm going to give this a 2, but this is a higher 2 than other 2s. Like, I'm typically not bringing this, but if I did want an energy management pet attack skill, this is definitely a solid option, and one that I need to kind of remember. It's a skill that I don't think about much, but in those cases where I want that, this is a very solid choice. I like Ferocious. So this compares basically directly with Ferocious Strike. Ferocious Strike obviously having a little bit more damage, a little bit better recharge, gaining you adrenaline, but not as much energy, and being an elite. So, Scavenger Strike, though, competes pretty favorably against it. It gains you more energy, slightly longer recharge, a little bit less damage, but not considerably. The main downside is this doesn't gain you adrenaline, makes up for it with additional energy, but it's on a condition, so your mileage will vary. This, like I said, it's not one that I've often brought, but now that I'm kind of like analyzing these skills again, because it's been a long time, this is probably one that I should bump up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and bump this one up to 3. Because I think that condition of suffering from a condition, the conditional clause of it suffering from a condition, is easy enough to meet that this is actually a pretty solid energy management skill. So it should certainly be trying to compete with Ferocious Strike pretty favorably. And I should keep it in mind. So I'm not going to bump it all the way up, but because the adrenaline clause, to be clear, on Ferocious Strike matters an awful lot in the situations where I want Ferocious Strike, which is like on a warrior. So that's part of what would get that a higher rating than this one. The energy is less important on a warrior, generally speaking. But, this is a very solid option and definitely one that I need to remember exists. So, good, solid design. It plays with the fact that Rangers like to inflict conditions to gain energy. Energy management is not something Rangers want much, but, it might pair well with Rampage's 1. So, yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. Strike as 1. 5 energy, 10-second recharge, elite shout. Your animal companion instantly moves to your target, so that's a Shadow Step probably, and causes bleeding for 13 seconds with its next attack. The next time you hit with an attack, target foe is crippled for 13 seconds. Okay, so the conditions on this are okay, but they're not stellar. You're bringing this more as a way to teleport your pet to your target. In that capacity, it's fine. I'm going to give this a 3. This is not an elite that I'm typically going to bring with pets. I'm generally going to bring... honestly, I'm probably going to bring Enraged Lunge, which is like a 4.5. Enraged Lunge over this most of the time. That said, this is okay. Bleeding and crippled are... Like, you're not doing this for the bleed. The bleed is okay, but not a very good condition. The crippled is certainly good. This skill seems like one that would be real fun in PvP, just because, like, oh, all of a sudden you have a pet on you and you're crippled and it's attacking you. Like, this is suddenly pressure out of nowhere. And that's really cool. I can see this being mildly useful in PvE from that standpoint. Like, but it's a fine skill. I really like the design of this one. I think it plays in a really cool design space. I just think it's a lot more interesting as a PvP skill than a PvE skill, which is probably going to be something I say a lot about Ranger, if I'm being blunt about it. But this is a fine design, and I like the spot that this is in that regard. Okay, Symbiosis, also known as the spirit that's going on all the time in the Megumin jungle. For some reason, centaurs like this one. I don't know why. Anyway, it's 5 energy, 5-second activation time, 60-second recharge. Nature Ritual, create a level 8 spirit for each enchantment on non-spirit creatures within range. Again, non-spirit is completely redundant because you can't enchant spirits. That creature has plus 125 maximum health. The spirit dies after 126 seconds. So this one's pretty easy to build around. You just go into an area where the enemies don't usually use enchantments, and you do bring lots of enchantments, and suddenly you will be way HP-er. So I'm going to give this a 2. It's a cool design space, by the way. It makes enchantment stripping more powerful because it drops maximum HP, which, remember, maximum HP comes off the bottom. So when they gain this, they basically gain 125 health. When they lose that, they lose 125 health from their current amount of health. You definitely, if you're going to be using this in PvE, which is a little questionable, but it will make you bulkier. This works really well, I guess, if you're trying to do some sort of Bonder build. Bonder is referring to a monk skill called Life Bond, which is where the name comes from. That's an enchantment that makes people tankier. So if you're doing a sort of a Bonder build, or something along those lines, where you have lots of enchantments happening, this can add a lot of additional bulk. Honestly, though, it's not the most exciting, and trying to use nature rituals is really clunky, yada, yada, yada. So it's fine, but I'm usually not going to bring this. You will see enemies use this. It is what it is. Symbiosis is fine, but just very, very awkward to use and generally not worth it. So, Symbiotic Bond. That's a weird recharge. 10 energy, 55-second recharge, which, like I said, is weird. For some reason, this is a shout and not like a skill. I don't know why that is. For 264 seconds. Okay, that's it's like 4 minutes. 4.5 minutes almost. So that 10 energy gets ameliorated real quickly. Your animal companion gains 3 health regeneration, and half of all damage dealt to your animal companion is redirected to you. Okay. Gonna level with you here. You're going to be able to get your pet 3 health regeneration as it is with good ol' Never Rampage alone, the skill that keeps coming up because it is so good. And you also can bring Call of Protection to make your pet tankier. This is not making... I mean, this makes your pet tankier, but by killing you. That's not preferable. If this redirected damage dealt to you to your animal companion and gave your animal companion, like, more health regeneration, like 6 or 7, maybe that becomes a little bit more interesting, but that kind of... Or, like, this would even be more interesting if, like, half of damage dealt to you is dealt to your pet and vice versa or something like that. As it is, this is, it's a design space that, like, it has potential, but frankly, Call of Protection is better. It doesn't last as long, but still freaking lasts 2 minutes. Doesn't need to last 4.5. Or almost. This is, not the way that I want to protect my pet. Call of Protection is. So I'm going to give this a 1. Simply because, like, it is so outclassed. Call of Protection is already a skill I don't want most of the time because I want my pet to deal more damage, not absorb more damage. Symbiotic Bond is inferior to Call of Protection. So why would I ever bring it? Tiger's Fury. Hi, we already talked about you. You were terrible. Because you're in Beast Mastery for some inexplicable reason. Toxicity. 15 energy, 5-second recharge, 5-second cast time, 60-second recharge. Nature Ritual, create a level 8 spirit. Poisoned or diseased creatures within this range suffer -2 health regeneration. This spirit dies after 78 seconds. So this is kind of like Lacerate, except it works off of better conditions, because poisoned and diseased deal 4 pips of health regeneration. Also, it works off of either poisoned or diseased. Now, if you're both, you only have 2 health regeneration from it, but it doesn't matter. If you have both, you'll have max health degeneration anyway. Of course, health regeneration will counter health degen, so maybe that matters a little bit, but it's kind of nebulous. This is another 2, though. You do have to... You are trying to build around this. You are trying to make sure to intentionally spread poisoned and diseased. Again, those don't affect non-fleshy enemies. The damage conditions are nice. I tended to go to debilitating conditions more than damage conditions, but I'm happy to have damage conditions. This does make them better. This will inflict 4 HP damage per second, but keep in mind this will affect you too. It's fine. It's probably an effective part of, or could be a nice piece to have in some sort of pressure build. But the thing is, those builds that are probably going to be stacking like poison, disease, and bleeding are already going to be hitting the degeneration caps without toxicity. So it's questionable. I don't like hate it or anything, but it's in an awkward spot being in Beast Mastery instead of Wilderness Survival. I don't know why it's there. And it's a little bit of a win more type skill where it's just like, it's applying, it's a little bit of additional pressure, but I didn't really need that. I don't know. It's a neat design space to be playing around with, though, and I appreciate that it exists. So, I guess those are kind of my thoughts on it. A lot of these nature rituals, again, are just going to get very low scores because trying to play with them in PvE is really annoying because you're going to be placing them, you're spending the first 5 seconds of battle placing it. If you're bringing a preparation, you're probably spending another 2 seconds of battle. Like, by the time you're done getting ready for battle, the battle's over. And then half the time you're either bringing like ritualist skills to drag this along with you and wasting a bunch of energy on that, or you're leaving this behind, in which case it's like, that's the thing, is the nature rituals are really designed for prolonged battles within a specific area. And that doesn't tend to happen much in PvE unless it's against specific bosses and things like that. So, or like a defense mission where you're staying in the same area. So something like toxicity, just like all of the other nature rituals, it sets up an area that is affected by a thing. And unless you're staying in that area, it obviously doesn't do anything. So in a lot of PvE, you're moving across a map and you're not staying in one place. And that makes all of these nature rituals way worse as a result. So that's just kind of part and parcel with the design of nature rituals. I don't tend to bring them. They are really interesting to have on enemies because they set up stuff in that area, but AI really likes to attack them, so they don't, and they tend to be very low level, so very fragile, so they just don't stick around. But from the standpoint of affecting that sort of stuff, they're interesting. They are much more interesting in PvP than PvE just because of the nature of how the gameplay flow works. So that's really all I have to say about it. Viper's Nest. So this is the only trap in Beast Mastery. It is 10 energy, 2-second activation time, like normal for a trap, 20-second recharge. Trap, create a Viper's Nest. When it is triggered, all nearby foes are struck for 29 piercing damage and become poisoned for 17 seconds. Viper's Nest expires after 90 seconds. This trap is easily interrupted. Those last two things are standard trap clauses. You'll see more when we get to traps. Most of traps are in Wilderness Survival. I'm not going into Beast Mastery for this. I'm going into Beast Mastery for a pet. I basically don't bring this. This is kind of flavored as like animal handling. It's like, oh, I'm planting a nest of vipers or whatever. I'm going to give this a 2. Because it's a perfectly fine trap, but, and it's a giant but, it's not the most damaging trap. It's in the wrong attribute for traps. Because, like I said, traps are in Wilderness Survival. If I'm doing a trap build, I'm going in Expertise and Wilderness Survival. Expertise because of some of the trap support skills that we'll talk about later. I'm not spending attribute points in Beast Mastery to make this work. This is kind of like, I'm being generous to this, and it's kind of more of a 1. I'm never bringing this because I'm not going into Beast Mastery for random other crap. It's the same problem with Tiger's Fury and Bestial Fury. They're themed after animal stuff, so they're in Beast Mastery, but they're kind of the only thing of their type in that area, or they're competing in awkward ways and just doesn't work. Like, Tiger's Fury is an effect that I'd be a lot more interested in if it wasn't in Beast Mastery, because the only time I'm going into Beast Mastery is when I'm bringing my pet. And that means that I am inherently going to be using the skill that is just better than Tiger's Fury, right? And so it's the same sort of, it's a side issue, or it's a similar sort of issue with Viper's Nest. I'm not, like, if I'm going into Beast Mastery, it's for my pet, not for a random trap. And so, like, I'm generally not going to bring random traps on my bar. If I'm bringing traps, it's to be more dedicated to it, at which point I need to be in Wilderness Survival, not in Beast Mastery. So that's the whole problem with this. It's a perfectly fine skill. Design of it is fine and all of that sort of stuff. It's just in the wrong attribute line. And this is a case where being in the wrong attribute line means that I'm not going to bring it. Because I have all the stuff that I need in, like, all of the other traps are in another attribute line. So that's the problem with this skill, and why I'm not going to bring it. So anyway, that goes ahead and wraps up the Beast Mastery. It is your pet attribute. It makes your pet better. Most of the skills are pet skills, and frankly, a lot of them are not terribly exciting. The pet attacks are super competitive. The random nature rituals are much more of a PvP thing than a PvE thing. But it has some decent elites if you're doing stuff with pets, and pets are really strong, and they can be a lot of fun. So there are some cool things that you can do with it. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, and until next time, everyone, take care, and goodbye.